These newspaper article readings are not for the faint-hearted or the squeamish. If you're at all sensitive, I might suggest these aren't for you. If in doubt, check the description below. It'll tell you which topics are covered in this particular episode. There's both human and animal suicides, and you heard that right. There's also horrific descriptions of injuries, as well as the deaths of youngsters. So don't do it to yourself if you're prone to nightmares, is all I'll say right now. Not all the articles are horrible. Some of them are uplifting, some of them show incredible bravery and heroism. There are near misses. So these were picked as showing life prior to health and safety, as well as for the crazy and curious details some contain, with other miscellaneous happenings that kind of struck me enough to post the articles to Twitter, despite not having too much relevance to Scotland necessarily. These are worldwide topics, and they didn't have any real connection to the projects that I was working on and researching at the time. I just happened to have come across them by the way, kind of thing. So we'll get into them, shall we? What we're going to do here is we're going to do a lucky dip of newspaper articles to really mix them up a wee bit, because while I'm doing the researches, I'm obviously coming up with the same kind of terms and things. So we'll mix them up even further. So to that end, I have all of the newspaper titles and dates of the articles. Okay, what does the hat have for us this episode? Let's find out. We have the Greenwich Telegraph and Clyde Shipping Gazette for the 19th of January 1904. Well, we start with a couple of articles, neither great. We have a woman's fatal jump. Glasgow, Tuesday, Euphemia Livingston or Barber, 51, late last night jumped over a window 3 stories high in Findlay Street and was killed. It seems that her husband had refused to give her money for more drink. The second reads, Young soldier drowned. Glasgow, Tuesday. A singular drowning affair is reported today. Matthew Rankin, 20 years of age, who was last night ordered to join the Irish Fusiliers, missed the train to Greenwich. He immediately left the railway station and proceeded to the river where, it is alleged, he jumped in. On being taken out, it was found that he was dead. The deceased lived at 83 Mayburn Street, Glasgow. That's from the Greenwich Telegraph and Clyde Shipping Gazette for the 19th of January 1904. The first. I hope that was investigated. Did she jump, or did the husband, a little bit tired of his drunk wife, maybe push her? Couldn't say. I would assume that they're taking it as read from his testimony, that it was because he wouldn't give her more money for drink that she jumped. If so, then that was a very desperate woman. It's a real shame. Physicians' drink leads some people to... yeah, it's just a shame. And the young soldier drowned. Can he really have been so averse to joining the Irish Fusiliers that he's taken his own life? Maybe. I assume he couldn't swim if he was able to just jump in the water and drown in that way. I would think that your natural instinct to survive, if he was able to swim, fairly sure he would have done so. It doesn't say that it's because he didn't want to join the Irish Fusiliers. That's just a conclusion that's easy to come to with that article. There doesn't seem to be any testimony. It seems to be supposition. He's alleged to have jumped in rather than have been put there by anybody. Did he miss the train to Greenock because he encountered somebody and there was some kind of contention between them leading to his death? That's also a shame for that second article. So that's quite the way to start. We'll see if we've anything a wee bit more positive. This one is the Scotsman for the 8th of June 1905. Let's see what the Scotsman has. We have another 2 articles from the Scotsman here. Fatal accident at Leith. A shocking accident occurred in the mills of the Edinburgh Ropery Company in Bath Street, Leith, late yesterday afternoon. One of the employees, Jane Ann Goodwillie, 19 years of age, who resided in Hawthorne Bank Terrace, Leith, was drawn into the machine at which she was working, through her hair becoming entangled in the machinery. She was removed to Leith Hospital, where it was found that she was suffering from a compound fracture of the skull. She died half an hour after admission to the hospital. The second article gives us Leith and the plague. The total cost to Leith Public Health Department of the recent outbreak of bubonic plague was £230, which includes fees to experts, cost of disinfectants and of disinfection, and the salaries of the extra staffs employed. And they're related to us by the Scotsman for the 8th of June 1905. That first article is horrific. Again, health and safety would likely have prevented that. She would have been made to have tied her hair up, perhaps wearing a hairnet to keep it right out the way. There would likely have been guards installed to ensure that the staff weren't able to get close to moving parts that were likely to entrap them and cause them injury or death. What a horrible way to go. The second, even though it's just an article about how much it's cost, it gives us quite a wee bit of an insight. This is 1905 and they're talking about the cost for dealing with the bubonic plague, which you don't consider was still active in the 20th century. This seems like the kind of thing that to read about you'd be looking at medieval history, perhaps maybe a wee bit later than that, but you don't consider that in what's considered fairly modern times that the bubonic plague was active and causing the health department's real stress, I would think. £230, that would have been quite a lot of money. It doesn't sound like much to us now. We'll see what the Bank of England inflation calculator gives us. So £230 in 1905, the cost in 1948 is £769.14. So we'll do £769 in 1949, the cost for last year. So they're looking at having spent £20,425-ish for dealing with the bubonic plague in Leith. So that's quite an amount of money for just one town to have spent on dealing with this plague, and I can't imagine it was restricted to Leith. If they managed to restrict it to Leith, all kudos to them, but I can't imagine it. So, yeah. It's strange the things you learn from newspapers, huh? We'll see what we have next. So far we've been getting 2 articles per paper. We have the Glasgow Herald for the 1st of December 1848, so an older article here. This is just a wee article. On Tuesday last, at the Central Police Court, 2 men named James Skirving and James Black were charged with furious driving in the Gallowgate on the night of the October fast day, by which a woman was seriously injured. This person had been confined to the infirmary almost ever since. After a lengthened investigation, the case was proved when Bailey Brown fined Black in the sum of £5 and Skirving in the sum of £1, which was a lot of money back in 1848. So, yes, that's from the Glasgow Herald for the 1st of December 1848. And furious driving. Let's see how fast they were going. Not really. I've seen this furious driving. I think it may have even made it into an earlier episode. I've seen these people getting done for furious driving, but it's maybe 10 miles an hour they're going. Not what we would consider particularly fast now. In fact, the police might stop you for not going fast enough if you were to drive down a main road at the speeds that some of these people were being condemned and fined for furious driving. So, well, I hope they learned a lesson, especially as they managed to injure a woman. I assume she was perhaps crossing the road and didn't have time to get out the way of them, or I don't know. But yeah, here's hoping they didn't get anybody else with their furious driving. I'll have another article. We have the Perthshire Advertiser for the 28th of March 1902. This is another wee article. The Prince and Princess of Wales journeyed to Chatham on Tuesday to attend the launch of the new battleship Prince of Wales. A gunner of the Royal Garrison Artillery had both his arms blown off whilst firing the royal salute. And that's from the Perthshire Advertiser for the 28th of March 1902. And at the start of that article, I'm wondering, how did this article make it into the list that the Prince and Princess of Wales have made a journey to see the launch of a ship? Oh my word. That ended on a very different note. I don't know what the outcome was for that gunner. I don't know if he succumbed to his injuries or perhaps he was able to survive after amputation. But wow. I mean, that article was only just 2 sentences long. The first sentence is quite the contrast to the second sentence. Wow. Okay. We'll have another one. I believe there are positive stories left in the hat. I believe it. I think I have to. The next we have the Aberdeen Press and Journal for the 22nd of July 1907. So to end us, it's not going to be on a positive note, I'm afraid. We have an article entitled The American Railway Disaster, dated Detroit, Michigan, Sunday. The annual bean feast of the Per Marquette Railroad workers yesterday was the occasion of an appalling railroad collision, resulting in 30 people being killed on the spot and 70 injured, of whom 10 have since died. The railway employees, with their wives and families, and the young men with their sweethearts, set out in the morning from Ionia, a happy, boisterous party singing and merrymaking for their picnic at Detroit. In a deep cutting, their train, which was eastward bound and contained about 800 passengers in 11 carriages, collided with a westbound goods train. The latter had disobeyed orders and ran into the cutting, hoping to get out before the excursionists came along. A farmer in a neighbouring field saw the excursion and goods trains enter the cutting at full speed and dropping his spade, he ran to see the inevitable tragedy. The two mighty locomotives met with a sickening crash, reared into the air and fell to the ground, a mass of hideous wreckage. Over a mile away, the roar of the collision was heard. 6 coaches of the excursion train were terribly wrecked, and not one of their occupants escaped death or injury. The engine drivers and firemen of both trains did their best and shut off steam to reduce the force of the impact, and before the actual collision they jumped off the train. It was a most awful daylight spectacle. For fully an hour after the accident there was heard the shrieking and groaning of some of the poor victims, pinned down by the wreckage, terribly injured, and who implored the rescuers to kill them. And that's from the Aberdeen Press and Journal for the 22nd of July 1907. There's not really much you can say about that article. There was a follow-up in which it was stated the driver of the freight train escaped and, though injured, fled from the scene when he saw the terrible wreckage. I bet he did. I bet he ran. That was entirely his fault. He literally had orders, instructions, a signal to tell him, don't go in there yet. There's another train is going to need to come out first. And he's just gone, nah, it's fine, I can make it. And that's the outcome of that decision. I bet he bloody ran. I wonder if he was ever caught up with and what happened to him. Just really awful. Just awful. So, that ends this episode, and we may see you for the next. Take care.